What's up? This is the second video of the series of the videos that I record just to be a better YouTuber. So this exercise that I come up with it has few main parts. One part is that I need to look directly at the camera like I'm doing right now. Another part is that I will need to read a book. And this is the main part of the exercise. I will need to read a book. Read one page or one paragraph and then tell you about what this was about. This will help me to develop, this is supposed to help me to develop the skill of being able to come up with things to say quickly. And so far, I like this exercise. I recorded already one video with it. And this was good, so this is the second video. So, let's start. I'm gonna grab my phone. So, this is the book that I'm reading right now. This one. It's a great book. So, last time I stopped here, Meet Josie King. This is a story about a girl who died at the hospital because of the doctor's mistake. So this book essentially this book is about influencing people. And so this story was there in order to show doctors that sometimes their actions can harm people. And it was about this doctor who used this story in order to show other doctors, this to other doctors, and to change their behaviors. So let's find where I stopped. Changing minds worldwide. As a way of pulling together everything we've discussed, let's return to the Carter Center's Guinea worm eradication program and watch how use is made of both stories and experiences as a way of changing minds at a global level, one village at a time. Consider what the team did in Nigeria. To begin with, former President Jimmy Carter recruited General Cowan to join the Nigerian team. Former President General Cowan is beloved by Nigerians for bringing stability and democracy to their country. So the day the general visits a village is one of the most important in its history. After dances, songs, and a tour, General Cowan explains that he brings great news. He asks how many in the village suffer from the fiery serpent. He then explains that he has come to teach them how to rid themselves of the serpent forever. The general then asks the villagers to bring him water from the pond. They bring him a clay jug full of water. He pours water into a clear quart bottle for all to see. This is a new experience for most villagers, who carry their water in buckets or pots. Now they are examining their murky water for the first time. The general shows them a magnifying glass and asks them to use it to look at the water and tell him what they see. Someone describes the many tiny fleas swimming and darting around. Everyone gets a look, and most are disgusted. As they watch, the general covers another glass bottle with a cloth filter, pours the pond water from the same pot through the filter into the second bottle, and invites everyone to take a look. Not only are all the insects gone, but the water has changed from a cloudy yellow color to a clean liquid. The beloved general then asks the villagers which they would rather drink. Everyone points to the clean water. He hands it to the chief, who drinks the filtered water and reports that it is good. While holding everyone's absolute attention, the general now tells them about a village not too far away. It too suffered horribly from the Guinea worm. Many of these neighboring villagers could not work. Their crops rotted in the field. Many died. Then the general taught them how to destroy the worm by filtering the water. The nearby villagers followed everything the general instructed them to do for 2 full years. After 1 year, no one in the village has had the serpent. After the second year, they knew for sure it would never come back. You can do what they did and be free of the fiery serpent forever, the general promised them. The villagers nod thoughtfully. They are not entirely convinced, but the compelling experience and convincing story have brought them to at least suspend their disbelief. General Cohen has begun to change their minds. This is the first step in helping them change their behavior. So this page, actually 2 pages, was talking about the general who people loved, and he came to this village and showed people, actually with an experience, like he literally gave them a magnifying glass and showed them that they were drinking water that has these worms in it. And so then he told the villagers a story about the other village that did whatever he showed them and got rid of this worm. And this worked on the villagers in a way that made them disbelieve it less. Summary: changing minds. People will attempt to change their behavior if 1. They believe it will be worth it, and 2. They can do what is required. That is important. Let's highlight that. Instill these 2 views, and individuals will at least try to enact a new behavior or perhaps stop an old one. To change one or both of these views, most people rely on verbal persuasion. Talk is easy, and it works a great deal of the time. However, with persistent and resistant problems, talk has very likely failed in the past. And it's time to help individuals experience for themselves the benefits of the proposed behavior. It's time for a field trip. When it's impossible to create an actual experience, it's best to create a vicarious experience. For most of us, that means we'll make use of a well-told story. Stories provide every person, no matter how limited his or her resources, with an influence tool that is both immediately accessible and enormously powerful. Hell, that's a hard word. Poignant, okay. I keep forgetting how to say this word. Poignant narratives help listeners transport themselves away from the content of what is being spoken and into the experience itself. Because they create vivid images and provide concrete details, stories are more understandable than terse lectures. Because they focus on the simple reality of an actual event, stories are often more credible than simple statements or facts. Let's highlight that too. Finally, as listeners dive into the narrative and suspend disbelief, stories create an empathic reaction that feels just as real as enacting the behavior themselves. Tell the whole story. Make sure that the narrative you're employing contains a clear link between the current behavior and existing or possibly future negative results. Also, make sure that the story includes positive replacement behavior that yields new and better results. Remember, stories need to deal with both will it be worth it and can I do it? When it comes to changing behavior, nothing else matters. Okay, I'll highlight this whole paragraph. So this page was about the importance of telling stories and how to actually tell stories and what are two criteria that make people change their minds. The first criteria is whether it is worth it, and the second one is whether the person can actually do this. And a good story must include both of these things. So like, if I tell you a story about something, I need to tell why it is worth to change the behavior that I did or I heard people doing, and whether you can do this or how you can do this. So let's continue. Part 2. Make change inevitable. Who shall set a limit to the influence of a human being? Quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Let's say that you have discovered the vital behaviors that need to be enacted to help resolve a profound and persistent problem you're facing. You have also helped everyone involved to see the need for change. Now, how do you actually go about making that change happen? To answer this question, let's return to Guinea worm disease eradication efforts in North Africa. This time to a town in Nigeria. Imagine that you're following General Cowan. Is it Cowan or Gowan? It's actually G. Hell, I mispronounced his name this whole time. Gowan, okay. Imagine that you're following General Gowan. He has been to this village to help dislodge the flawed beliefs that have kept villagers from changing their behavior. Minds have been changed. Certainly, changing behavior will be a snap. So what's the next step? Most of us have our favorite influence methods. Just pass a law. Just threaten a consequence. Or just offer a training program. The problem with sticking to our favorite methods is not that the methods are flawed per se. It is that they are far too simplistic. It's akin to hiking the Himalayas, not only a fanny pack. There is nothing wrong with Gatorade and granola bar, but you'll probably need a lot more. Bringing a simple solution to a complex and resistant problem almost never works. Nevertheless, people bet on single source influence strategies all the time. For instance, ask leaders how they're planning to change their employees from being clock punchers to quality zealots, and they'll point to their new training program, the same one that they're convinced drove General Electric's stock through the stratosphere in the 1990s. The training content might provide a start, but when it comes to creating a culture of quality, it'll take a great deal more than a training class. Ask politicians what they are doing to fight crime, and they'll tell you that they're working hard to secure harsher sentences for felony convictions. Also not enough to have much of an impact. Ask community leaders what steps they're taking to stem the growing plight of childhood obesity, and they'll sign the praises of their latest pet project, removing candy machines from schools. And let's be honest, how many of us haven't yearned for a quick fix for our own problems? A miracle diet pill, a magical marriage solution, or a $500 set of DVDs that promise financial freedom. Just give us that one thing, and we are ready to roll. But it takes a combination of strategies aimed at a handful of vital behaviors to solve profound and persistent problems. In fact, this is the core principle demonstrated by virtually all the change masters we studied. No single strategy explained their success. In fact, it became quite evident that individuals who succeed where others have routinely failed overdetermine success. That is, they bring more influence strategies into play than they might assume would be minimum required for success. They leave nothing to change. This could sound discouraging. In chapter 2 we shared the good news that it often takes only a few vital behaviors, routinely enacted, to bring about massive and lasting changes. Now we are adding the idea that while you need to affect only a few behaviors, behind each you'll uncover a number of forces that either encourage or discourage the right action, and an equal number of forces that either enable or block the correct behavior. Ignore this varied and sundry, what the hell is that word? Sundry. Ignore these varied and sundry forces at your own peril. Fortunately, there is additional good news. We now know enough about the forces that affect human behavior to place them into a coherent and workable model that can be used to organize our thinking. Select a full set of influence strategies, combine them into a powerful plan, and eventually make changes inevitable. So these couple pages tell about that you need not only use one tactic in order to change human behavior, but you actually need to use a lot of tactics and actually bring more to the table than is required to actually have some big change. Master 6 sources of influence. Here is how the model works. As we have said before, virtually all forces that have an impact on human behavior work on only two mental maps. Not 2,000, just two. At the end of the day, a person asks, can I do what's required, and will it be worth it? The first question simply asks, am I able? The second, am I motivated? Okay, let's highlight that too. Consequently, no matter the number of forces that affect human action, from peer pressure in a junior high school to making citizens aware of the cost of illiteracy in a barrio, to offering a class of anger management in Beverly Hills, all these strategies work in one or two ways. They either motivate or enable a vital behavior. Some do both. Motivation and ability comprise the first two domains of our model. We further subdivide these two domains into personal, social, and structural sources. These three sources of influence reflect separate and highly developed literatures: psychology, social psychology, and organization theory. By exploring all three, we ensure that we draw our strategies from the known repertoire of influence techniques. Let's quickly look at the range of influence sources effective influencers draw upon. Don't worry if they aren't crystal clear at this point. Don't worry if they aren't crystal clear. Don't worry if they aren't crystal clear at this point. Over the next 6 chapters, we explain the various influence methods in detail. In fact, you are likely to see how many of them account for improvements you have made in your own life. But for now, you'll know how to consciously draw upon this robust set of sources anytime you need. At the personal level, influence masters work on connecting vital behaviors to intrinsic motives, as well as coaching the specifics of each behavior through deliberate practice. At the group level, savvy folks draw on the enormous power of social influence to both motivate and enable the target behaviors. At the structural level, top performers take advantage of methods that most people rarely use. They attract appropriate reward structures to motivate people to pick up the vital behaviors. And finally, they go to pains to ensure that things, systems, processes, reporting, structures, visual cues, work layouts, tools, supplies, machinery, and so forth support the vital behaviors. With this model at the ready, influence geniuses know exactly which forces to bring into play in order to overdetermine their chances of success. Pictorially, what's this word?
Pictorially.
Pictorially.
Pictorially. Pictorially.
Okay, whatever. Pictorially, we can display these 6 sources of influence in the following model. It looks like this. You can't really see what's written there, so I'll read you. Motivation, personal, make the undesirable desirable. Motivation, social, harness peer pressure. Motivation, structural, design rewards and demand accountability. Ability, personal, surpass your limits. Ability, social, find strength in numbers. Ability, structural, change the environment. Oh, this is actually... this makes sense. I cannot highlight the picture, yeah, whatever. Okay. To better understand how each of these 6 sources operates, let's return to the village in Nigeria, where we show up with visions of annihilating the nasty Guinea worm. We know that villagers need to enact only 3 vital behaviors in order to eliminate the worm. First, people must filter their water. How hard could that be? Second, should someone still become infected, he or she must not make contact with the public water supply until the infection has run its course. Just stay away from the water. And third, if a neighbor is not filtering water or becomes infected, the villagers must confront him or her. Since we know the 3 behaviors that will eradicate the Guinea worm, it sounds as if our influence project won't be particularly complicated. However, before we start giving heartfelt speeches and handing our 4-color pamphlets, let's see how each of the 6 sources of influence affect this actual project. So let me quickly tell you what these couple pages were about. There are 6 strategies to motivate people or to show them that they are able to do this. And they are divided into personal, social, and structural. And so these things are... this is how you actually influence answer these 2 questions for people. Whether they can do this or whether they need to do this. So let's read. Source 1. Personal motivation. When the Guinea worm is exiting a victim's body, the pain is absolutely excruciating. Since victims can't merely yank at the worm out of their arm or leg without the worm breaking and causing a horrific infection, they are forced to wind the parasite around a stick and slowly edge it out over a couple of weeks, or even a couple of months. There is only one source of relief during this prolonged ordeal, and that's for victims to soak their painful sores in water. That means that individuals are personally motivated to do exactly the opposite of one of the vital behaviors. Stay away from the water. If you don't deal with personal motivation, your influence plan will fail. Source 2. Personal ability. Many of the villagers don't know how to properly filter water. They have been trying since General Gowan left, but the Guinea worm, hell, that's a hard word, Guinea. But the Guinea worm disease is still rampant. When they take the steps to filter the water, they'll carelessly stop over a splash here and drop there, infecting the water supply and continuing the infestation. Or they'll transfer filtered water into a pot that's still moist with unfiltered water. They'll need training to enhance their personal ability. Source 3. Social motivation. Next, when you sit down with the locals to teach them how to eliminate the Guinea worm, nobody is going to pay very much attention to your advice. You're an outsider, and as such simply can't be trusted. You may be in good with the chief, but there are 3 tribes in the village, 2 of which resent the chief and will resist anything you offer because he is behind it. Social circumstances change. You have a serious problem with social motivation. Source 4. Social ability. People in a community will have to assist each other if they hope to succeed. When it comes to an outbreak, nobody can make it on his or her own. If ever there was a circumstance where the expression "it takes a village" applies, this is it. For example, if someone comes down with the worm, others may have to fetch water for him or her. And when it comes to filtering, locals often have to buddy up in order to have enough pots to both fetch and filter water. If locals don't enlist the help of others, you'll be missing the key factor of social ability. Source 5. Structural motivation. Given the villagers' current financial circumstances, living hand to mouth, individuals who become infected can't afford to stay away from work. This forces them to labor in and around the water supply. Quite simply, to put food on the table, they'll need to fetch water for both their crops and livestock. This means that the formal reward system is at odds with the 3 vital behaviors. Infected people earn money only if they work near the water source. If you don't compensate for the existing reward structure, victims will be compelled to serve their families at the expense of the entire village. Try to move forward without addressing structural motivation, and your influence won't reach far. Source 6. Structural ability. Lastly, locals don't have all the tools that they need to filter the water or to care for their wounds in a way that keeps them away from the community water source. Worse still, the layout of the village makes access to the public water supply so easy and natural that it's enormously tempting for victims to merely plunge their aching arm or leg into the water, at the peril of everyone else. If you don't work on this last source of influence, structural ability, you'll also likely to fail. So these couple pages tell us about that there are 6 problems that you need to overcome in order to actually change anything, especially if it's some big behavior of many people who live together in a community. Make use of all 6 sources. Now that we have explored how all 6 sources of influence came into play with the Guinea worm project, It's easy to see why influence geniuses take pains to address each source when going head to head with a profound and persistent problem. Leave out one source and you're likely to fail. Throughout the remainder of this book, to demonstrate how the six sources can be applied in combination, we explore what Dr. Silbert has done with each of these influence tools to help transform lifelong felons into productive citizens. At the home level, we follow an individual who is trying to lose weight and see how each of the six sources might apply to this widespread, pun intended, problem. Finally, we would ask you to pick a challenge of your own and read each of these chapters with that problem in mind. Then fashion your own six source influence strategy. Do it correctly, and like Dr. Silbert and dozens of other successful influencers, you will solve problems that have had you and others stumped for years. This is actually very interesting. Let's highlight all these six things. Make the undesirable desirable. Okay, let's actually finish here. This video is already half an hour long, which is more than enough. So that was it for today. If you like my exercise, you can try it yourself. I just show you how. If you don't, then write in the comments why. This video is not intended to actually provide you any value. This video is specifically for me to exercise. So if you watched all the way through here, then I don't know why, but still. Thank you for watching, and I see you in my normal videos.